thank you so much for joining us. So excited for this week's live session and one of our last for 2024. We're going to be taking a retrospect look backwards at some of the event tech trends that defined this year. And we're going to look at some of the key challenges and what we should expect and work towards staying ahead of for next year and looking at some of the tech trends that will define 2025. Without further ado, Brandon, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, of course. I think before we dive in, I would love for you just to give us an introduction to who you are personally and professionally, and maybe give us just a little bit of background on BW Events Tech.
Sure. Yeah. So, Brandon Wernli, I'm CEO and founder of BW Events Tech. I've been in the event space for about 20 years or so, working specifically with event technology, and I started my career, if some know, way back when with a company called Wingate Web, project managing different clients on the event technology that they offered at the time. Worked at Cisco as a contractor, and during my time there, we oversaw the technology strategy and deployment of the Cisco global conferences, and started BW Events Tech about 12 years ago, roughly. So BW Events Tech, we are a group of 250 plus event technologists. We support clients worldwide. And you might be asking, what in the world is an event technologist and what does that mean? Essentially, what we do is we have, very briefly, a few core competencies that we approach the market with. We are event technologist consultants, so we are platform agnostic, and we will take a look at your entire event tech stack, try to understand what your goals and objectives are, and then ensure that your tech stack is best aligned with those goals and objectives. So as well, on top of that, in addition to being that sounding board and that consultant at the table as you're planning your events of all shapes and sizes, we will then implement it through our professional services. So we have our project managers and architects, creative people, production, front and back end developers. And so we can do anything from a white glove service to, let's say the client says, I just need a mobile app built. And what do you recommend for that? Can you build it? Can you integrate it? And we'll do all of those things. And then lastly, our development, which we might touch on a little bit today, actually, as far as tech trends are concerned and how this impacts it, is we have front and back end developers. We're working with platforms out there that, as they are focused on their product roadmap, they need a little bit of flexibility to be able to augment their platform or to integrate with other platforms. So our front and back end developers augment, build out, and essentially enhance the platforms that are currently out there today, so that our clients who are often looking for a little bit of custom experience can get that bespoke experience that they're looking for. So there's a lot that goes into that, but we become somewhat of a Swiss Army knife to our clients as a result.
Incredible. I think needless to say, across your personal journey, your career, as well as just the scope and breadth of experience and expertise that your team brings, you all really have a powerful, and I also like to call out an agnostic point of view on what's happening in the sector, especially from a technology standpoint.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's really important for us that we maintain that agnostic approach, because when we have that seat at the table and the client is really looking to figure out, what do I do with all this, that we are recommending a platform that's best for the client at the end of the day. And so that's our ultimate goal.
I love that. So let's start by taking a look back, and we can kind of start high level, and I'd love to kind of drill in, a little deeper, but would love for you just to talk at a high level. What were some of the key trends and themes that you saw, both in the sector and across your client base, in the event technology landscape over the course of this past year? Challenges that you saw, and challenges that you're seeing your clients look to overcome.
Yeah. So like you suggested, I'll touch on some high level things. Anything that you want to dig deeper into, let's do it. So we had some things that were influencing the tech space as it relates to events, and some things that had nothing to do with technology where, there were some groups that were constricting their budget or saying, I know we're a few years or a couple years removed from COVID, but the ideology around, okay, we're going from a virtual event experience and now we need to introduce either a hybrid or let's go strictly into an in-person experience. So the budget for a lot of our clients, we saw them say, well, we have the same budget that we used to develop this virtual event. You're going to try to use that same budget to do 2 times more. And so we had to get really creative from a technology standpoint. And so we noticed that technologies were influenced by that dynamic of a post-COVID experience. Another thing that was playing out is that there was some consolidation of the event tech stack or the players out there in the market. Part of that did have to do with the COVID trends, and we were inundated in a very positive way with a lot of virtual event platforms during COVID, and they, in order to survive, needed to become more resilient to allowing flexibility towards the in-person. And so I think one of the things that event stakeholders were challenged with or tasked with is, okay, who's going to stick around? Who's going to be the
Mhm.
most flexible? What can I put all my eggs in which baskets, and how would that look? The other things that were playing out is enhancements in facial recognition. I think a lot of us who have our own personal device were often able to access secured areas by just putting it up to our face, and how simple and how ubiquitous it has become. And so that has translated into opportunities in the event space. I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the subject of artificial intelligence and the
Yep.
personalization. And so I don't know that the event space has really adapted to that concept in great abundance, but there are a lot of feelers that are out there and some things that have played out in 2024 that have shown us what AI can do, and also just kind of lift the curtain a little bit of what the potential of AI could be in the future. And then there's a couple of one-offs, such as, the nature of a lot of event platforms in the industry is a little bit shying away from the bespoke and let's be more SaaS. In other
Mm.
words, let's stick to a product roadmap and let's be efficient with all of our customization requests, because a lot of these platforms realize that they couldn't be everything to everybody. So how do you deal with that when you've got an enterprise client with very unique needs, or you have a client who has a lot of different event types, but it's hard to find a platform or a set of platforms or a tech stack that's right for all of those event families. And what do I do about that? And so I think there were some learnings in 2023, 2024 on how do we handle that? How do we become more flexible and dynamic? And how do we prepare for 2025 and beyond in that regard?
Those are all great insights. And even like, I've been having conversations weekly for the last 6 months with other event leaders. And it's even interesting to hear some of the things that you're calling out and how they thread into other conversations I've had. And even like the enhancements in facial recognition has an AI edge. I had a really interesting conversation with the developer that created Microsoft Bing, and he's now in the event space, and he's using cameras pointed at the audience, doing facial and body posture recognition to auto grade the quality of session content.
Awesome.
And it's just like, oh my gosh, like I don't know anyone else that's doing this. So it's cool to kind of tie a thread between what I'm personally hearing from other people in the space and what you're seeing on the other side of the fence on the technology side.
Yeah, we conducted a pilot with facial recognition in a kind of a focus that I wasn't thinking about, and it was from a security standpoint. And
Mhm.
conducted a pilot that in deploying the facial recognition, we were able to take a keynote with about 9,000 people all in one space and say, okay, we have, and again, pilot, we have a potential problem person who could be a threat. Again, this was made up.
Mm.
For the sake of the pilot, we wanted to see how quickly we could act. the facial recognition could look across the sea of 9,000 people, pick out that one face and say they are in roughly this seat right now. And
Wow.
security was able to act and diffuse the fake scenario that they had played out in order to confirm that the technology could address the challenge that they were trying to solve for. And so, in addition to all the personalization, which is fantastic, and the user, the convenience that you could experience with it, that was something that was eye opening for me. Like, wow, that's that's insane. That's impressive.
Wow. That's really powerful. Um, I'd love to walk back and start at one of the points you made around, because this is also a conversation we're having internally around shifting expectations. But maybe there's less tolerance for shifting the budget with those expectations.
Or
And so what practical advice do you have for those tuning in that are migrating through that shift?
Yeah, there's some aspects to this that I think we can optimize our technology in order to leverage the economies of scale is one point, and I'll dive into that. The other is, let's say, for instance, if there's a strategy where we need to implement some sort of hybrid approach, what is the most optimal or efficient, maybe cost-effective way to go about that so that you're not spinning up duplicate events, so to speak?
Mhm.
From an economies of scale, and every client and every scenario is different. So I'm speaking in kind of general terms here, of course. Um, let's just say the what is helpful for an event team is to find those tools that are most flexible and friendly to integrate. Because like was mentioned before, tools and platforms are designed to be as SaaS as possible from a general standpoint.
Mhm.
And what event teams are challenged with is that they have all sorts of different event families within a portfolio, and there isn't a one size fits all. But if these event platforms could be just a little bit more flexible, then perhaps they could stretch to address other event families. Because when that happens, is you can work with almost any event company. Let's say it's a registration platform company, and say, look, I'm able to provide you a few dozen more events, but you're lacking these requirements. So they're
Mhm.
bring in another platform instead. And so BW events, and I'm just going to speak in principle. If there is flexible APIs and perhaps SDKs, flexible front end, there is that allowance to be able to augment platforms to fill in the gaps through partnering with people like BW events. Uh, we help facilitate the standardization of platforms. And there's a case study that goes along with this. And I'll speak in high level. One of our clients was using a particular tech stack, and they were spending, let's say, about $10 per registrant for all of their events. And that was adding up a lot of money over time. Let's call it 100 events.
Wow.
By maximizing their tech stack by saying, look, you've got all of these reg platforms that you're stacking up and using as a redundancy. Let's take one or two and augment them to fill in the functional gaps through front and back end developers that will provide. Why? Because the platform is flexible with good APIs. So if you're set up with a platform or a set of platforms with great APIs, you can get away with this. As a result of this standardization of the tech stack, the economies of scale were able to set in, and we converted them from like $7 to $10 a head down to 17 cents a head. And this was
Wow.
the hundreds of thousands of dollars as a result. But again, the premise is can you standardize it? And do you have the Swiss Army knife type partnership to be able to augment the current platforms to allow you to do that? So time and again, we're pulling out case study after case study saying, yeah, we'll help you with the bespoke experience to allow you to do that. So that's one bucket. The other experience is, let's say you're tasked to create a hybrid event experience, but you have a fixed budget, and that fixed budget was only managing a virtual event previously. So one of the things that we recommend, if it fits within the strategy, is create an always-on environment. In other words, have a single portal where your attendees can go in and have a single universal account for all of their events. And that allows them to update their cart with the next event in the series of events that they might be available for, or that might align with their interests. Then use the always on instance for all your virtual content. It will have virtual libraries, and you can have on demand viewing of various sessions, but it's all in one spot. And so if you wanted to filter for an event from 2 years ago for a specific technology or product or whatever it is that you're consuming, you can filter and the content is endless. But then you also have an area that's for the live type stuff, for the live keynotes and the live sessions that you want to attend. But you didn't have to build a brand new quote unquote event, technology speak, within your tech stack. You're still using the same interface and you're maximizing your dollars, but you're also giving a better experience for your attendees. And imagine, Brian, if you were to, with all of this data, all in one hood, under one hood, what you could do with personalization and AI. So Brian could then authenticate within this always on environment. It says, Brian, thanks for joining us. I understand that you attended this event 2 years ago. There's other content that you would be interested in. Why don't you register for these events? It's in your area, but these events also are touching on the things that you're most interested in. And so now it's more useful for the attendees. And you may get an uptick in the in-person attendance because of the way in which you handled everything. So it's just a great concept if it applies to the strategy of client to say, here's a way to optimize funds, here's a way to keep it efficient, and it also is very helpful for the attendee at the end of the day.
I I absolutely love and agree with what you just shared there. I mean, like, we're in the event tech space, right? And so, we talk to across the spectrum. We talk to a lot of people that, the primary focus of what we're doing from an event standpoint is everything pre-event, right? It's all of the session development, and we get through our event, the curtain closes, and right, like we hit pause, and we're already moving into the next event cycle. And I sit from a seat where in the event tech space, all I can think of is we have this amazing reservoir of value, of content, of insights that have long-term value.
Yes.
What do we do with that? And then at the end of the day, whatever the objective the event is, customers you're looking to engage, what you're looking to sell, et cetera. The long-term value of, and I love what you point out, and I want to highlight, like having all of your data under one hood, having all of your session content live evergreen in different formats, 365, just allows you to build a more comprehensive ecosystem of data that lets you better know your audience, your customer, your ICP, their challenges, where they dig in, where they're not engaged. And this allows us to do so much more, not just from a business perspective, but it also helps inform everything that we're going to do from an events perspective in the years to come. And so there's this holistic ripple effect impact when event teams are implementing what you're talking about, from, being able to scale the impact of an event, which again, I think if you can prove that over time, you're also making a stronger case for your budget next year as well.
That's exactly right. And so let me touch on the budget aspect and also some of the business components really quick, because here's the cool thing is we touched on some of the personalization and the budget constraints or the budget efficiencies gained. If you could imagine for a moment what would play out if your sales team, because they have all of the data under one hood, if we were able to then very easily create a centralized dashboard for your sales team to look at their top 10 accounts and say, holy cow, some of my top 10 accounts are really active on consuming a lot of my content. Can we gear their personalization towards specific outcomes that suggest that they would have a higher propensity to buy our stuff? And so you can tweak that. But the other thing too is that because we're standardizing the tech stack, okay, you've got fewer platforms, but more flexible platforms. Do you have a more efficient data flow from your marketing automation platform and your CRM, let's say it's Salesforce, for a bi-directional experience? So that, to your point, if somewhere outside of events, there's some activity for these clients, we now know about it and we're personalizing based on something happening way outside of the event sphere. But we now know that they had some activity that was really compelling that we want to introduce some demo on site. Now, from a general ROI standpoint, which is the holy grail of events, if you've got a simplified tech stack that's connected into the lifeblood of your ROI, which is your Salesforce and your marketing automation platform, and when we're speaking about budgets, you can start proving, I think I can convert more sales or more MQLs or so forth because I'm showing in the data that we're doing it. And therefore, 100,000 extra bucks or another $1,000,000 to push towards this event because we are very compelling in the whole funnel. And so that's where a lot of that story is able to evolve. And so you start with a tough budget, you work with it, and hopefully it expands because you're showing the ROI.
That's incredible advice. We're kind of pulling on a few different threads here. And what's interesting is I think that they also flow into and connect like what's going to be more vital, more important, most important to stay ahead of as we look into next year. And but before we jump ahead, I also don't want to leave AI behind. Um, and I also think that maybe AI can be our pivot in a sense because, right, like adoption, innovation's happening so fast first and foremost. But I do think that you mentioned kind of at the front that you're not sure if the event space is fully caught up to harnessing the power of AI. And so, as we move into the future, my guess is there's going to be opportunity to close that gap. So I'm kind of curious, like, if you were to dig into AI for the event space, particularly, like, what I want to ask two questions here, and I'm trying to fit it into one. But I'm kind of curious, like, what are like the roadblocks to implementation that you see, and then like, what are some success stories in AI that you've seen in this past year?
Cool. Yeah. So some roadblocks that we have seen, what's coming to my mind is two things. One is there needs to be more options out there to allow you to do what a lot of our event teams out there are dreaming up. But nonetheless, there are some options and some offerings, and I'll share some of those success stories in a moment. As it relates to other roadblocks besides just kind of sheer options is data privacy. So inherent in the AI experience is the assumption that we're going to leverage a lot of data, personal data, let's just say. Doesn't have to be personal data. It could be more anonymous aggregate data. And so for many deployments that have to do with AI, there are opt-ins that generally are of necessity. And then so there's that bucket, and part of that bucket is getting these AI tools and platforms through your privacy reviews. They probably all go together. So I'm just going to focus on the opt-in side of things because often what plays out is for a lot of our clients that are trying to conduct AI solutions is that they need to have explicit opt-in from the attendees to say, yes, you're okay to use my data in order to create, let's say, we're using AI for a personalized experience. And the challenge with the event owner is that they're like, wait a second. So what happens to this relatively expensive deployment that we really are falling in love with, and we feel like it has so much personalization to it? What happens if only 30% of people opt into it? And then what kind of ROI is that? And I can't control their opt-in. What do I do? So there are a few things that we've done to help overcome or work with this challenge. One of those is that what we have found is that we have to educate our audience to know that there's a benefit to them generally. And that may get more people. And let's be honest, most people don't read. So you can shove a bunch of clause and information in front of them and say, I swear you want to use this. This is going to be great. But until they actually see it happening and hear about it from other attendees, that's generally where the pivot point is, where they start wanting to say, okay, how do I get back in and change my answer to that opt-in? So I so to illustrate this, we may leverage hypothetically AI in order to help an attendee personalize their personal calendar. So one simple deployment is that based on all the data that you put into registration, maybe data that's in Marketo or Salesforce, is you press a button and just like that, we will fill up your agenda with all of the sessions, demos, and activities that are simple for you. And so they might see that button, or maybe it's grayed out and say, oh gosh, I really want to click that button because I don't want to spend a few hours searching for the content that I want. I want to click a button and just have the whole thing filled out. So if that is the area and they can see that there is a convenience factor there, there needs to be a pop-up or some action that's very convenient that says, oh, you can turn that back on. Just allow us to leverage your data to do this, and that's all. So they click it and they're back in the game. So whatever the experience is, help them understand through a very convenient way of, hey, there's a little FOMO going on here. People are doing this and you really want in. Here's an easy way to opt back in. And we have seen opt-in numbers go from 30% to 90, which is more than
Golly.
deploy something like that because they got it. They understood, oh, you're not trying to be big brother to me. You're actually trying to be helpful. And by the way, I'm noticing that you'll get rid of my data after the fact. That's cool with me. So that's one of the tactics. You just got to kind of get in the mindset of the attendee to say, what can help them understand that this is very helpful, making it convenient for them, and I'm giving them something as a result.
I have a lot of conversations about AI, and I rarely hear the advice. Like it's sort of like the golden rule of advice, which is just always put ourselves in the shoes of the attendee.
Yep.
And I don't hear a lot of folks talking about that, and I think that that's great advice, right? Just like baking in the benefit into the user experience itself, right? Everybody's going to go in and try to, find all the sessions they want to attend. So just baking into the user experience with the click of a button, to get them opt in is brilliant. And
Ryan,
I love.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I know. I was just gonna say I just love the advice of just continue to put the attendee or your customer at the very center of the experience from start to finish, and it's just a great guiding principle for like where do we need AI and where don't we need AI.
Totally.
Um, it's a great filter.
And generally, I think the attendee can sniff out if you're trying to use their data for your own benefit. It's like, oh, what's in it for me? Why do I give you my data? And I have, to answer your other question, I have an example of how this played out in reality in a success story, how we managed that very challenge, and what did the deployment look like, if that's helpful from an AI standpoint. And so that might give the audience an idea of, oh, I didn't realize that this is available right now. I thought this was a future thing. No, this is available right now, but we can, to your point, go into what's future as well. I see Mark Perone, a good friend of mine, asking a question. Should I?
Yeah, answer away. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining. So Mark said I can bubble it up for folks if people aren't looking at the chat. A super valuable prompt for attendees is, quote, I have 2 hours from 2 to 4 p.m. today. What can I see if I'm a data engineer for a bank?
Yes. Yeah.
But I think Mark's input is like great application because, right, it's like you're taking inputs from the attendee to say, who am I? What do I care about? And using an AI platform that's flexible enough to be built into whatever platform you're using to host your session content, and you're really co-creating with the attendee what their experience will be based upon those interests, passion points, centers of belonging that connect to your event, right? Like all of those things factor into the experience they want. So I think Mark just like it's a simple prompt that actually gets an attendee more out of what you're building for them.
Yes, 100%. And I'm going to share in my experience something that might it'll go along nicely with Mark's comment. Let's pretend this person is a person from banking, as a data engineer, and what should I do for the next 2 hours? So here's what played out, and here's how we made it successful. Was working with a Fortune 500 company, and essentially they had a challenge. They received data back from their surveys that said, A, our survey scores are suggesting that we don't know how to easily find where we need to go in order to get to the content we want. So they're getting lost in the sea of all the options. Okay. Again, big event. And the second thing they said is that they're not. So one was more of a wayfinding issue. The other one was I'm not able to find the exact content I want, and I don't know how to get to it. I don't know how to get there.
Mhm.
Well, it was interesting feedback we were getting. So what ended up doing is we pitched this idea from a technology standpoint in order to address the issue of leveraging AI, mobile app, indoor wayfinding, and also augmented reality put together in order to make a fun and engaging experience to allow attendees to know where to go next that's personalized to them and how to get there. That was the whole goal.
Wow.
So we're able to pilot new trending technologies that were hot that we knew attendees would talk about. So here's how it worked. So we had within the exhibit hall, they had a lot of sessions and demos. In fact, for this event, 90% of all event activity was contained within the exhibit hall. At a crossroads of their aisles, we would have a pillar standing there at the crossroad. And if you put up your phone at the pillar, an augmented reality signpost would appear on the phone. And it was unique to Brian, or let's just say it was unique to Mark Ferrone as a data engineer for a bank. The reason why it was unique to Mark is because with the AI, it was tracking what did Mark say during registration? What sessions has he been visiting today? What demos? Who did he network with? And it was taking all of this information, and the arrows that appeared on the signpost was recommendations in proximity to Mark saying, just go this direction for data engineering type content near you. You tap on the signpost and then wayfinding kicked in. It was almost like watching Google Maps or, another function where it showed the blue dot of where you were on the floor and then the exact directional on how to get to that specific activity. But let's say if Mark attended that activity and went to the next pillar, the recommendations changed because it's living, breathing, so to speak. And it knew just conducted another piece of data point that was helpful to the engine to learn from. So if you can imagine for a moment, you've got all these attendees that are seeing this and people are talking about it and putting it on social media. This was awesome and helpful. And side note, from an ROI standpoint, we did surveys after the fact and saw that the survey results bumped up as it relates to my ability to find what I'm looking for and to get where I needed to go. So that was huge. But attendees were talking about, and so those who did not opt in, who wanted to play the game, so to speak, they said, how do I do this? Oh, here's a little tick box in my mobile app. That was easy. I'm in. And now that area is now available for them to participate. And they loved it. And so the uptick of users as it went. So it checked a couple boxes. We took care of the barrier. We had a challenge that we were addressing. We showed ROI as a result, and it was something that the attendees at the end of the day wanted. And we addressed it from a practical standpoint with technology. And it worked.
That's amazing. I don't know if you're able to share, but I'm more curious for folks that want to like research and dig in further. Do you have platforms that you would recommend people explore that can help do this?
Yes, there's several platforms out there. And at the end of the day, so we are platform agnostic.
Yeah.
And so what I would recommend, Brian, is if anybody has any questions, come to us. There are a lot of mobile apps. There's a lot of mobile app companies that are very flexible because you want a mobile app company. That's your platform to be flexible and to have the APIs. There's a lot of them that are really good at that. There's some that are better than others. And I'm trying to be careful.
I knew I might be stepping into dangerous territory because I know you want to remain agnostic, but
In
so
deployment, I'll share with you the vendor from an AI standpoint that did really well for us on this, and that was Turnout Now. They did a good job with us. They they know how to work with data. And so we also use Cisco CMX from wayfinding, but there are also other opportunities such as beacons. There's more than one way to go about the wayfinding experience, in other words. Those are just some suggestions. Amigo is a really good mobile app. Eventbase is great. Amigo has a lot of AI capabilities, as one of the topics that we're describing today. And so a lot of these do really well, but they're not the only ones.
Okay. Helpful. Really helpful. So again, I think a lot of what we've been talking about here is going to threads directly into what we need to be thinking about into the future. But I'd love to make that turn. Time here is flying by. So, you've called out, event teams that are looking to optimize budgets and scale events appropriately. We've talked a little bit about enhancements in facial recognition, AI, how to create more personalized attendee experiences with AI. And I think the other theme here that stood out to me was software companies are it's less bespoke. There's a less bespoke experience. There's more of a distinct product roadmap, but the key is working with software companies that have flexibility through open APIs so that you can lead the customization yourself for what you need to fill whatever gaps or challenges that you have between tools, especially as you look to less is more. So I just wanted to call out some of the kind of major strokes that you move through. So as we kind of take all that into consideration, what are some of the big trends or themes that you want people to be aware of as we turn the corner into 2025?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to touch briefly on a couple of things. One is I think more and more platforms are becoming more flexible because they're seeing the need. API friendly. They're creating environments where you can plug in widgets in the most seamless way, widgets that either you create or there's other third parties. So the goal of a lot of platforms, not all, and it's helpful to discern which ones because it does allow you to be more versatile, is who has these widget, partner stores that allow easy plugins to augment what's there so that you can scale and you can create efficiencies. So I see that playing out. Facial recognition is going to become more seamless, more cost effective as it is continued to be seen in things like express check-ins and, you described very well that sentiment tracking, help me provide personalization, but also get dialed into how people are feeling about it through their facial emotions, and facial recognition will do that. AI is probably the biggest game changer. And so I'll just touch on AI. Today, there is a lot out there as it relates to personalization. Based on who I am or what I've told the system, like the example shared, I'm going to have a journey created for me that's unique to my interests. That's already present. That's what we're waiting for. We've also seen deployments where you walk around a venue, and very similar to the augmented reality example, where the mobile app just updates and you just press a button and said, okay, what's around me based on my interests? And it just gives you a list of, here's all the rooms around you, and you may want to participate in these things. It's a more simplified version of what we described, where you're moving around, you're not dependent on an augmented reality pillar. All of that's already present. Where the market is going in the next, I would say, next few months to the next few years, very soon, is very similar to what we're getting out of ChatGPT. It's, I have this type of event with these types of attendees with these interests. Let's say going back to I'm a data engineer for a bank, that's my audience. Can you create a website that looks at my theme at my website? An event website looks at that theme, incorporate something that's friendly for that type of audience, make these call to actions, and then a registration experience that's seamless with a confirmation email that does this, that invites them back at this time. And then with the click of the button, it starts generating these things for you. And then like ChatGPT, you say, oh, I see what you did there. Let me tweak it. To be specific,
Mhm.
my audience, they also are of this general demographic and age group and interest, and it starts tweaking what you're doing on the fly. And so it's going to change the world of how we're functioning with technology. And I imagine it's going to continue to go down the road of now create a data or marketing strategy based on the same audience. And what is the overall journey that should be recommended in order for them to purchase more of my products? And so
Mm.
strategies will come out of this organically, and it's going to continue to learn. All of that stuff is going to be coming out in the next few months, in the next couple of years. And it's going to make the event owner's life much easier to allow them to be more nimble and more personalized as a result.
And I think the other side of this is something you were talking about earlier about how do you make sure that your event content lives on in online interactive formats, resource libraries, all that post-event content syndication. I mean, we're seeing I remember 5 years ago, like, we would need, like, a team of 8 to 10 people to syndicate and parse through and reuse and reformat all the content that's available to us is now possible with one person, not those 8 to 10.
That's great.
And so just like right, there's the pre-event attendee experience and how AI is influencing that. And then I think just wanted to pull in and bring it back to like the full life cycle of content that we're trying to create. Like AI is going to only accelerate what we're able to do from a post-event perspective. And that's going to breed again, like better insights to data and what our audience cares about, et cetera.
And to your point, if you're setting a good foundation of let's clean up our tech stack, let's make sure that there's a nice flow of data from the marketing automation and CRM into our tech stack. If we have an always on environment, man, it's going to be nice to have it all under one hood. And then let's throw AI at this and let's see what happens. For a lot of the innovation that's coming out, if you've got your act together in that regard, it's only going to facilitate your progress in that area much more efficiently, I would say.
Mm. Do you I don't know the answer. I'm asking out of curiosity. And I think I'll tee this up with a challenge that we see is we still see a major challenge between event teams and then the broader marketing ecosystem, right? There's kind of there's a silo effect.
Yeah.
Do you see any of these evolving trends and technologies actually helping to break down that barrier to kind of remove the silos that might separate an event marketing team from the marketing team, the sales team, the customer success team, et cetera?
I think so. And one of the ways which I'm seeing it already is like the example before, if you've got a good data strategy and you're starting to uncover the ROI behind your events, the marketing and sales team is going to have their antennas go up immediately.
And
So, like having that centralized dashboard for your sales team to then have visibility into their top 10 accounts, and then for them to have a say of, oh, I see this algorithm that you're providing that's creating a journey. If I could tweak that to say, get him in front of one of my guys at the event, I would love that because I'm seeing that, hey, there's an opportunity to strike while the iron's hot. This person's showing all the signs, and so the data's good. You're putting it in front of the right people. And I think it's going to organically create the collaboration because it's not just let's just create this event, burn it down, start over from scratch without much of a data strategy behind it. So, I think it's going to be an organic collaboration that's going to generate the technology. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. That's helpful, insightful. Um, I'm curious, uh, as we think about uh, oh, open APIs and like increased flexibility in platforms, just kind of curious, like what advice do you have for folks that are looking to create more customized solutions, right? Are there um, outside the box ideas that you've seen, creative solutions to making platforms more flexible, more tailored, more personalized? Any
Yeah.
approaches you'd recommend?
Well, there's a couple of things playing out in our world because we have front and back end developers that are uniquely trained to know how to work with event platforms. Well, it's not uncommon for us to have an event platform company come to us and say, we know what you're saying here about being versatile, and we know we can't appease every custom request out there, but we want to be flexible so that we can. And they'll ask us, what can we do for you? What can we do to make you BW events more flexible to be able to work with our platform to make it do tricks and backflips and all sorts of stuff? And a simple thing that we often tell them is give us access to all of your data. In other words, in the APIs, if your APIs only cover about 60% of your data, we're lacking the flexibility with about 40% of what we could potentially do. That's one aspect, is a universal flexibility to access data, to retrieve it, to update it, that kind of thing. The other thing is a very flexible front end is platforms that are very template approach. It has its benefits in that you can just keep copying over and over again. That's good, and it's that ease of use. If there's that element that you can turn on for people like BW Events Tech that can get under the hood of it, maybe it's a setting that says, get us access to the CSS and JavaScript components of this page. Now we're in business. Now we can take
Mm.
all of the access to all the data that we have. We can take the data and, oh, you wanted to go from step 1 to 5, but your template says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we'll use JavaScript embedded in the page. And now if you answered a certain question correctly, it's going to take you to a different step, but your platform didn't do that in the past. We put in some intelligence to make it do that. And so these are some foundational components from a very basic high level: universal data access, access to CSS and JavaScript. And those are good fundamentals to get the ball rolling. And if there's SDKs, that's even better.
Mm. Great advice. We only have a few minutes left, so I just want to pause real quick and just call out, if anyone has questions, throw them in the chat. Let us know what's top of mind. If there's a challenge that want us to dig into, want to make sure that we give a chance to surface it. Oh, cool. Mark's back in. How are you seeing event owners embed more AI to help improve the attendee experience?
Yeah, I mean, as it stands today, a lot of it has to do with, recommending journeys. That seems to be a very common approach, and it's what the event industry has gotten really good at. And one of the ways in which that's really benefited is especially on the, well, there's a couple of ways, but the sponsorship side has been interesting because now what you have the ability to do is recommend a journey to your sponsors in order
Mm.
to get to the products, the partner products that you're looking for, because that can be a little bit overwhelming. And then if the sponsors know that there is this recommendation tool algorithm, and if they're one of 20 different solutions that can come up in a recommendation, they might be inclined to add an MPO that says, I want to be the top dog on that recommendation because, yeah, so there's some MPO opportunities. From a content standpoint, and I know, Mark, you do a lot of content, is we try to take a page out of the book of YouTube and Netflix and so forth, where we say, how are users today consuming content?
Mm.
You may watch a video and then you've got recommended loops on the side, and every time you watch something, the recommendations update. And whether they knew they were on a journey, they took a rabbit hole of a journey down the YouTube experience. And so it's of the best interest of event owners to say, okay, that's working to consumers. Let's take those same consumers and play those same features out for session content. And let's take them down the journeys and let's watch what their behavior is, because there's a lot we can learn. Because often we create marketing strategies around persona-based approaches and let AI do it for you. Because often the persona-based marketing strategies are too oversimplistic. And
Mhm.
have more interest than just a bucket, right? But AI has a way to weed through that and get and cut right through and create like personas on steroids, let's just say. They'll take a journey, the attendee will, that's best for them because they're the ones that are kind of architecting that journey, going for the very content that they're looking for at the end of the day.
That's great. Any other? Awesome. Thanks for asking. Thanks for chiming in, Mark. Appreciate you. Any other questions lingering out there? All right, we'll give it a sec. I do just let's see. I just wanna make sure. I wanna see if I have anything remaining here. Um, you mentioned something at the beginning of the conversation, Brandon. And I almost wonder if we could maybe put a bow on this. Is you had alluded to that there are ways that platforms are approaching marketing versus clients want. And I think it kind of dovetails on what you're talking about here. And I think this also connects nicely into event teams also bridging the gap from event marketing into the broader go-to-market marketing team. Would love to know just like how is technology helping teams do that? And maybe I know we've talked about AI a lot, but are there ways outside of AI even?
And let me make sure I got the question right. Is the question is how is technology helping to facilitate the marketing strategy specifically, or I want to make sure I've got that.
Yeah, yeah. The marketing strategy versus like what an audience wants.
Mm. Good question. Yeah, so analytics do well. There's a couple of angles here. Having a good analytics platform is very effective, I think. W So first of all, where I'm trying to get through and just organizing my thoughts is we need to know our audience very carefully. What is it? We need to know what is our strategy, who is our audience, what are their interests, and how do they like to consume content. And if you've got a very clear picture on all of those fundamentals, technology is really there to facilitate the success of all of it. You've got analytics programs that can help you understand, did this campaign test out our assumptions in such a way where it validated that we understand our audience? Because I'm noticing that this campaign over here that we didn't predict is doing phenomenally well, but what we thought of our audience and how they would react is suggesting that this approach is simply not working. And there's a lot of that kind of testing over time where you get to learn your audience more carefully. But not to jump back into AI, but AI really is somewhat of a nice holy grail silver bullet to this experience. As long as you've got the right data strategy and you're pulling in the right information, AI will look at what campaigns are working and will guide you towards the best and most optimal way in order to address the attendees' needs. And it will help you educate yourself on the best ways possible. I can't tell you how many times, Brian, we did post-show analysis and we compared it to the initial marketing strategy based on how we understood the audience. And to watch the audience go from, and let me take a step back. We had a very specific persona-based strategy for an audience, but we layered on top of it AI recommendation journeys. We wanted to see the delta between the two, and the delta was different. What we thought about our audience was that they were a fit into a box of one or two or three different interests, and that's it. What we saw in reality is that they had more of a balanced approach, more so than we thought. We thought they'd be more specialized in why they were there. And they were going to things that we didn't predict. And we realized that we needed to get the power into the hands of the attendees, and then they would organically send them through the buying experience without much nudging. We just needed to make sure the content was being there at the right time. And so it did dictate, ooh, maybe we need to change our approach to how we're going about this. Maybe we need to have less specialized content in this regard. Maybe we need to have more hands-on experiences because that's where they seem to be going. And it did change the strategy overall. But that's essentially how it played out. It was somewhat organic. We just watched and paid attention, took notes, and said, okay, we need to.
Interesting. We've got 2 minutes left. I want to sneak in one more, and I'm letting this fly, and I don't want you to hold back. here at Session Board, we're committed to learning and building in the open. And I'd love just to hear openly from you, what can we do better, right? We're an event tech platform. If you were in our shoes, where can we do better? What would you focus on if you were us?
So some things you guys are proactively focusing on, which I appreciate because I'm working with you guys on some of our clients, is whenever there's been a gap in the APIs, you say, let's take care of that. And so that vision, now, whether or not you want to do that from a longevity standpoint, I don't know. And I'm probably, getting rid of Um, but Session Board, from a partnership standpoint, you guys have been very flexible, willing to address the core components of, oh, if we tweak this, this will make our partners and our customers more flexible with our platform. Fantastic. We're jumping on it. Love that attitude. Ooh, I've got some fireworks on the console. The other thing too is that single repository of always on, that's definitely going to be and will continue to be your wheelhouse of, you guys are managing a lot of content. You're also dabbling with sponsor content as well. And we have an always on environment. What does that look like from the Session Board standpoint, and leaning into that with AI and the recommendations? I think you guys are set up nicely for that as a part of a tech stack within the ecosystem.
Awesome. I'm gonna poke one more time. Do you have any constructive advice?
Uh, no, I actually don't have a ton of constructive
I
advice.
was, I was gonna say, don't be nice.
Yeah, the Session Board platform is a fantastic concept, and as you guys continue to be more and more flexible with those APIs, it's going to have a very nice, versatile approach to the market. And so, no, I'll try to be more thoughtful of that. But
Oh, good. We appreciate real feedback. So, to have you here present with us is a great chance to just ask and get you to poke at us. So that's great. And I have a lot to go back and take from your insights on the always on concept and bring back to the team. So excited to dig in. That is a wrap. We are at the top of the hour. Thanks for spending a little bit of extra time with us. Brandon, real quick, if folks want to get in touch with you or learn more about BW Events Tech, where can they get a hold of you?
yeah, please look me up on LinkedIn, and also bweventstech.com is our website. There are forms on there, and looking forward to answer any questions. If you've got post webinar questions that I can address, happy to do so.
Awesome. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Brandon or the BW Events Tech team, I'm also happy to facilitate. So, respond to any of my emails that I've sent you, and I'm happy to connect the dots as well. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us, closing out the year with us. Really appreciate your time and your input and your partnership. Much more to come. And thank you everyone for attending. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Brandon.